Welcome. So this is English 133 reading comprehension, whether it's A1, A500 or A501. Okay, this will be your lecture on English on chapter 2. So the book is called Reading for Results, and it has like a green target with a yellow arrow. Okay, so let's begin. In this chapter, your objectives will be how a word context or setting can help you develop a definition, how knowledge of a word parts can help you define an unfamiliar word, how to recognize specialized vocabulary words in textbooks, how context can change word meaning, and then how to choose a dictionary definition by matching meaning context, and when to use print or online dictionary. Okay, and I can tell you right away, everybody usually does online dictionary, especially when you're referencing, and that is huge. Okay, so let's start with the next page, making the meanings automatic. The pages that follow are going to give you numerous strategies for improving your reading vocabulary. However, as you learn those techniques, keep in mind that the ultimate or final goal of vocabulary work is to develop automatic word recognition. That means that seeing the word and knowing its meaning automatically without having to consciously think about it. So if in the course of your lifetime, you will be expanding your vocabulary, just because that's the nature of vocabulary and and speech and being able and languages and being able to speak, right? And so as you grow and the more that you read, the more that you expand your vocabulary. If you are bilingual and you know more than one language, whether it be English Russian, English Japanese, English Spanish, which is most prevalent here in our region, then it amplifies, okay, and it expands your vocabulary. And you have two registers, is what they're called, registries, okay? And so maybe you have a word in one in Spanish and then you don't know what it is in English, and it's going to transfer over, okay? Or maybe you don't know that there's a specific word and you're like, what is that word? Or you hear it from somebody. There's nothing more than being with somebody that speaks very eloquently and has a very rich and deep vocabulary, because you learn a lot more. And once you learn something, once you learn a word, then you can start integrating, okay? But it's very important to understand what it is that the word is, right? When I was like in 5th grade, I was studying, they had to make you these, like your words and then with a sentence and had to write them, which, was sort of rote memorization, but there's nothing better than really incorporating the vocabulary in order to learn it. But anyway, so, being able to understand the vocabulary of what the definition of the word that you're doing. So I used bosom. It was a new word. I've never forgotten it. So it's sort of, your breast, right? And so I used it to describe my brother at the time, because I had to use it. And of course it was completely incorrect, because he didn't have any breast, right? And that sort of, it was bosom. And so that sort of, didn't work at all. So now the good thing also with dictionaries is that you can do the pronunciation. Like right now I said bosom, but it wasn't bosom, it was bosom. And so you are able to understand, how it is pronounced. Before, we had to go into the dictionary, and there is the pronunciation of the way the word is done, and so it's just phonetic. So it's very interesting, because you have to really study that. Okay, so the more recognition and the more automatic that you have your words, the better, and incorporating them, and understanding their meaning is great. There is also lots of dictionaries that are available. There's also a lot of very different dictionaries, like Urban Dictionary, like, I don't know, most of your all's vocabulary, slang that really has not, that sort of has been integrated into regular language. And so sometimes I don't know what that means, and so I have to reference my Urban Dictionary in order to find it. So lots of resources online that are available. And then active review and memory pegs. So memory pegs are connections you make between what you already know and what you are trying to learn. When it comes to words, memory pegs can take many different forms. Here are just a few that get you started. So I'm reading off the book. You can very much follow along if you wish. So you have, like, there's a picture that's in the book, right? And so you have topography, topography, refers to the physical appearance of an area or region, particularly in the elevation and heights. And so a memory peg would be a topography map, shows you what's on top of the land, like trees, brushes, and mountains. So you could do a reference, right? A memory peg. So you peg it into that. And then you have like depiction, right? Refers to the representation of something, for instance, in a drawing, painting, or sculpture. So a memory peg would be a picture of something, all right? And then, alleviate means to improve or reduce or eliminate some difficulty of pain, right? Aliviar. Also, if you're bilingual, there's a lot of, compound words. Oh Jesus, I forgot what they're called. So there's a lot of words that transfer over and sort of sound the same, and they're written the same, and they mean the same. And I forget. I'm filming and I forget. But anyway, so those are words that you can transfer over. So alleviate sort of sounds like aliviar, right? So that means like to get better or to get better in terms of medically, okay? And so a peg for that would be Aleve, is a commonly used medication or for alleviating pain. So there's a lot of instances that you can use for your your language, right? Especially if you have a second language, especially if it's a Romance language, that can help you with the language that you're in, okay? And then of course you have context clues, that sort of let me see, that that help you, with the clues within the structure of the sentence, help you figure out what the word is, okay? And so a better strategy to see is to figure out an approximate definition and continue reading. So if you don't know the word, it's the context clues will tell you, and everything has context clues. So the context clues within the word and within the sentence can sort of tell you what the word is, and it's easier to just keep on going and reading, and then later reference the word to see if what your definition based on the context clues were correct. All right. And then we're moving on to approximate definition. So this is, that the sentence or passage in which the word appears can help you to determine an approximate definition that allows you to keep reading without interruption. And the definition may not be perfectly match the dictionary's definition. Still, it is close enough so that you can continue reading without interruptions, and that's what's essential, because the hardest thing to create speed within your your reading is to be able to continually keep on reading and be able to comprehend, because it doesn't matter how fast you read. If you do not comprehend what you're reading, then you have to go back and reread. There's also fixation is what it's called, and so when you read, you blink, and so you basically have the ability to read 1 point, I think it's 2.5 words a minute, okay? Or no, sorry, it's 1.5, so it's 1.5 word every fixation. So if you're able to get in another word in there every time you blink, you can read more words, okay? Because we all blink and then we have to refocus and be able to reread. So and then we go back to example clues that you already know from the previous illustrations. The context clues are unfamiliar words, sometimes provides with an example of the behavior or thinking associated with the word. Here's another sentence which is an example that can lead you to definition of word personification, and it gives you examples there in terms of example clues, okay? And then we're moving right along to contrast clues. And so context clues can also tell you what the word does not mean. Fortunately, knowing what the word doesn't mean can often lead you to a good approximate definition. Here's an example of a passage that provides a contrast clues, and there's contrast clues there within the book that you can reference, okay? There's also transitionals, right? These words are transitionals, the but, yet, nevertheless, however. Those are very, very important in order to not use the same words when you're transitioning from a paragraph to another paragraph, or you're doing transitional phrases. And moving right along, you have restatement clues. To avoid tedious word repetition, authors often use a word that and then follows it by a synonym, a word or phrase similar to the meaning. So you reinstate a clue, or you restate something that without being repetitive and using the same words and using synonyms to get along. There's all sorts of examples within the chapter there that helps you with that. Okay, and then mobilize your vocabulary and review. So making a file of words you need to know for different courses. Medical is incredible what you guys are doing in terms of your degrees. Medical terminology is critical for you to pass your exams, and for you to pass the NHA or the CCMA or whatever other courses, certifications that you need, not courses. So you also have general knowledge clue, okay, and this is this general knowledge is a situation or events described will be only real clues or word meanings, okay? So they are right on point, and they're general knowledge in terms of generally, okay? Let's see. And then we go to context meaning. Based on whatever the context is, you get the meaning out of there, and there's great examples and an activity there as well. This chapter 2 basically has give me a minute. I said activities. They don't have activities. They have examples. Okay, my apologies. And so at the end, I think you have your tests. Okay, that it sort of tells you. Within the chapter, you also have roots, prefixes, and suffixes. Those are really important. They can also help you with your medical terminology. Anti means against, so anything that your medicine and your medical word has that has anti is like fighting or against, and so you already know what that is. And so knowing your root words and knowing your prefixes and your suffixes are going to help you tremendously in order to be able to learn your words. By means to, im means not, per means through, poly means many, right? Like bilingual is two, more than one language. And so there's examples of that. So the more that you learn about your prefixes, your suffixes, and your root words, the better it is that you can learn your vocabulary that is critical to you getting your certifications. Let me see here. Let me keep on going. You have etymology is what I was talking about in terms of dictionaries. They have an etymology. Now you sort of just can Google it, and they're really good, definitions there. There's certain definitions within the definition when you look it up in a dictionary, and so you have to make sure that it matches. Usually the first definition is the most used, but sometimes you use another definition, so you have to go down to the other definitions that are stated, okay? Etymology is the history of the word, okay? And it's very interesting. So within the dictionary definition, it brings you the etymology. It gives you the way you pronounce it. It also gives you definitions, but it's very, very interesting. And if you ever check a true dictionary, right, it'll give you how you pronounce it, and then it'll give you the year that it was invented and that there was a need for it. And then, of course, it gives you the pronunciation and then the history of it. I think Webster took like 10 years to write 70,000 words and put them in, define them. And it took him, it was 70,000. I mean, I can't even imagine 70,000 words. It took him 10 years to handwrite, and he created a format. So thanks to Webster, which is usually the dictionary's names. There's several dictionaries. Webster's a very huge one, and that's because Webster created the dictionary, which was brilliant. I guess everybody used to write however it is that they wanted. Remember that, by the time that this was probably written, the dictionary, it was really only males that used to write and read, because they were the only ones that were educated, and of course they were, they were white Anglo-Saxon, which is an appropriate word. The ones that, in rich white men that usually went to school. And so it was probably back in that day I think it was in the early 1800s. I can't remember, or I think that the history of it brings it there. And if it's not, that's a little tidbit that it took him like 10 years. I might not be correct in all the history, so make sure that you verify on that. 10 years, 70,000 words. And I mean, it was brilliant for him to come up, with the idea that, hey, we need to have a resource where everybody can come in. I think that's the gist of the chapter 2 that you'll be doing. Let me see. And then, of course, let me see. It talks about here dictionaries and writing. It gives you quotes. Let me see. Give me a minute. It has a 7 test at the end, and you will have to be doing that. I don't think they're too laborious. So, that will be your homework, okay, usually for chapter 2, but always make sure that you check your YouTube homework video for that. So I hope this helped a little bit. It's a lecture. Hopefully I'll improve on them. This is my first lecture, so I hope you liked it. Comment below if you did. Love and light.